On today's episode, week 3 preview. We'll kick things off with a deep analysis on the biggest matchups of the weekend in our matchup spotlight segment. And then afterwards, we're going position by position, giving our starts and sits of the week. If you are watching this video or listening to this podcast right now, odds are you care a lot about fantasy football. If you care a lot about fantasy football, you should be subscribing to the Regression to the Mean channel. Go ahead, hit the subscribe button, click that like button, and turn on those notifications. We are coming to you 3 times a week to give Sunday recaps, waiver wire analysis, and weekly matchup previews. You are not going to want to miss out. A lot of new subscribers, a lot of new traffic to this channel over the last month. You do not want to miss out. You want to join the growing community that we have here with Regression to the Mean. Before diving in to week 3 preview and matchup spotlight, there was a trade today. A trade today that inspired a lot of memes about 2 players being the definition of mid. The Minnesota Vikings have acquired Cam Akers for a future 2026 pick swap. That is right. We're in the year 2023, so I have no idea what that trade will look like. How is that even a real trade in terms of compensation? But Cam Akers is now headed to Minnesota. Quick thoughts on the trade, fellas. How do we feel about it? It's interesting. It's for sure going to have a fantasy impact, but I don't really know where we go from here.
Yeah, this is it's just like another mini victory lap. I kind of mini victory lapped earlier this year. It's just like I don't think they think Alexander Madison's that good. I think kind of bottom line, they went into this season with him, Ty Chandler. And I think at this point, like, given they haven't ran the ball very much to start with, but in Alexander Madison's touches, it's nowhere near the level of production that Dalvin Cook was giving them in the exact same offense. So I think kind of just someone to compete, maybe give that offense a little more juice. They're 0-2. McConnell had Cam Akers in Los Angeles. This is a guy that I would assume he had a pretty decent say in, whereas Alexander Madison was inherited. So I don't know. For fantasy purposes, this probably only hurts Alexander Madison. This helps Cam Akers. Like, I don't know. His value is probably about as low as it was going to get given he was inactive. But at the end of the day, is anyone really winning this? Probably not. The biggest loser is going to be Madison owners. But I don't know. I don't think anyone really wins here, sadly.
Biggest winners, Kieran or Kyron? I don't know how to say. I think Kyron.
I think it's
right?
Kyron
Williams.
I thought it was Kyron Williams.
Oh, no. I was going to say Kyron.
He's
I'm
the
not
big
sure.
winner for sure. Like, he's gotten crazy usage through the first 2 weeks.
You're right.
And the backup running back is Zach Evans. There's really no one behind him. He's going to get a lot of run. Keegan, what are your thoughts on the trade?
Yep.
I have 0. I don't. It could honestly not even affect Alexander Madison at this rate of play. Like, I think it says a little bit more maybe about Ty Chandler than it does about Madison, but I also doesn't think it says a lot about their running back room in general. I think it's just like, okay, we can acquire a guy for next to nothing. We give up next to nothing as well. And we get another person, just like another Jag, just another guy in the room, and we roll with it. And I don't know if it has a massive amount of impact on their rushing game in general. Like, we're always going to look at this team throughout this year as like the passing offense, and we're just going to like bank on that every week. And honestly, I think Madison has a pretty good matchup this week, and it'll be a good time for him to like, we'll know more after this week. But like, if Madison, if there was a good week of any for Madison to like kind of show out and prove his spot is secure, it would be this week. But I don't know.
Next Gen Stats has a metric called rush yards over expected. So it takes like a baseline and it has like a benchmark of what your rush yards over expected could be, considering what the average rush should be. So Cam Akers is minus 41, second worst in the NFL. Alexander Madison, minus 22, ninth worst. I just think the fact that they came into the season with Ty Chandler and Alexander Madison as their running back room is terrible. Like, that was really the plan. We didn't even think to draft anybody, or I think it's more of an indictment on Ty Chandler. And I think, Aidan, you said this right. It's like, now, like, if you are a Madison owner, you could watch him be terrible and literally have no fear because you're watching Ty Chandler and you're like, this guy's like a practice squad player. This guy's a special teamer, right? Now you have someone who's rushed for a decent amount of yards and has played in the NFL a decent amount in Cam Akers. So it's like there might be a quicker hook. There is a threat now if you did draft Alexander Mattison. So I think it's a wait and see approach. I don't think either of these running backs is particularly good. And I think Kieran, sorry for mispronouncing your name, you're the big winner here. You're the big winner here of this trade. Okay, so week 3. This slate is not as sexy as week 2. Maybe it's because we're already just getting a little tired, but I'm not seeing any like huge, massive matchup that's blinking. We have one that we're going to touch on. Aidan's actually going to cover that one. But Aidan, you started off last week. I think it's only fitting that we have Keegan start things off. And again, Matchup Spotlight is a segment here for any first-time viewers where we're just going to deep dive a specific matchup that we believe is going to yield a ton of fantasy points. Look at it from a bunch of different angles so you don't have to. And if you catch something that's very interesting in your ear, you can put that in a pick'em lobby. You can use that to start a flex player. We want to be able to give you actionable insights that allow you to pick the best possible players each week in and week out. So Keegan, you have our heart, our soul. You have the Atlanta Falcons traveling to what Pat Thorman has dubbed the Coors Field of the NFL, which is Ford Field, where it's just points, points, points. Tell us a little bit about the Falcons and Detroit Lions this weekend.
We have our early contender for the first Establish It Bowl of the year between two coaches who love nothing more than establishing their own game plans.
The Fantasy Jail Bowl too. Two guys that are just like, we're not going to play our best players.
Exactly.
Stop asking.
Opened at 45.5 points for the total. Last time I checked, it was about 46.5. So a lot like fantasy friendly point production or projection for sure in the total, but. Yeah, Thorman and the established the run crew do not project this to be a high pace, fast paced game. And for good reason. The Falcons have averaged the 5th fewest combined plays. So pretty brutal there for them. But Lions offense is 5th in explosive play rate right now. So it's going to be a very interesting Newton's law of gravity between these two teams, like the immovable object and the other side of that function here. One thing that's interesting to me too is like the run games, as I already mentioned, like the Establish It Bowl, right? Like according to Hayden Winks's like underdog models that he does based off half PPR expected points, Atlanta is 2nd in running back usage by team, and Detroit is actually, I think, 6th. So, and that's going to change a lot with no David Montgomery. So I'm going to start looking at some of the offenses here. Obviously, we know what Arthur Smith wants to do in Atlanta, and it's like we want to run the ball. According to PFF, Atlanta has the best run blocking matchup of the weekend in week 3. So I will be looking for some Tyler Algier work. And, of course, this is a great matchup, I think, for Bijan again. So wheels up there. Atlanta is 4th in the league right now in rushing yards per game at 170 yards per game. So we're going to see that probably continue again, averaging almost about 5 yards a carry from their running backs. They're also 8th in explosive run rate and 5th in explosive yards at 81 total. So this has got Arthur Smith's game plan written all over it. What's interesting to me, and I'll flip to the defensive side of the ball, is Detroit is actually ranked pretty well against the rush game this year. So I'm kind of seeing if the well will break and give here on Detroit in this matchup. Currently 23rd in the league in rush yards per game at about 86. They've only allowed 2 rushing TDs, which is more than some, but not the most in the league for sure. They rank 21st in explosive yards allowed from rushing and just explosive rushing yards percentage. So they've been really good against the run thus far. Now they haven't played Arthur Smith or Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. So I'm really, really excited to see how this kind of like boils down for those two. It's going to really just be like a clashing of two kind of sides here. But one thing to this with Detroit, and I know Arthur Smith is going to want to run the hell out of the ball, but one thing with Detroit, they're bottom 10 passing defense right now in terms of yards allowed per game. They've also allowed 4 passing TDs. Like they're tied for third in the league most with 6 other teams. So Atlanta, on the offensive side of the ball, for all the things we've covered with the running game, like this is maybe a sneaky opportunity for Arthur Smith and co. to kind of get the pass game going. And also Ford Field, Points Field, Overs Field, whatever you want to call it. Like, they are going to have to keep up with the Lions in some way, shape, or form. And sure, they could run the ball down their throats, but Detroit's been a little bit better in that aspect of the game this year. I think if Atlanta wants to be competitive in this game and keep up, they're going to have to pass the ball. And I think there's a glaring weakness in Detroit on that side of the ball as well, too. So the unfortunate part is those same models I was referencing for Hayden Wink's expected fantasy points, like Atlanta ranks dead last in wide receiver usage based on expected fantasy points of the wide receiver position. So it's going to be interesting nonetheless, but I think this game is going to be super fantasy friendly for obviously Bijan, obviously Algier. I think there's sneaky upside play for the passing game at Atlanta. Amon-Ra St. Brown, like his matchups against Jeff Okudah and also D. Alford, the slot cornerback, are super, super friendly matchups according to PFF's matchup rating. So I think another good day for the Sun God as long as he's fully healthy, ready to go. Some Josh Reynolds upside play here. Also, Detroit as the fifth best pass blocking advantage in this matchup. So Jared Goff's going to have quite a bit of time to get to work back there. So I'm kind of wheels up for the passing game. I think my favorite part about this game and everything I've said is like what they do best, we will see on full display. And there's also some holes in the coinciding offense and defense that I think what they don't do well right now, they will need to kind of like key in on. So Atlanta's got to pass the ball if they want to stay in this game. Run game should be great. And also Jahmyr Gibbs, if there was ever a week for him to get involved with no David Montgomery, this would be the week. He's been great and, kind of demanding and earning targets, but I really want to see his kind of like actual run game. Yes, Shaun, let's pray for it.
I play Aidan this week. I need the breakout more than I need air. We need to take down the bad man, Aidan Holler and Delmar, and I'm going to need a massive Jahmyr Gibbs week. Am I going to get a Keegan from doing the matchup previews? This is going to happen.
This is the week, I think. I'm starting him across all the leagues I own him in. Like, if there was ever a week, it's got to be this one. I think this matchup's sneaky fun. People are going to say, like, this isn't the most exciting matchup, but I think it has really good sneaky appeal. We're going to see two teams do what they do best and put it on full display and go against each other. So I like it.
Both of these teams don't really have strong pass rate over expected. They've skewed run heavier. And Atlanta has actually been the least pass-happy team in the NFL so far, Detroit 27th. Looking at pace, Atlanta has actually had a bunch of plays in their games. They've actually had the 12th most plays of any game, Detroit the 15th. In terms of adjusted pace, Detroit is 9th, Atlanta is 19th. We're just kind of hoping here for big plays, right?
Yep.
If we get big plays, I think that we're off to the races, and this is going to be a great evening a great afternoon of fantasy football. If not, it might just be the Bijan show. But Bijan versus Gibbs in a dome.
Give it to us, man. Give it to us.
At Ford Field. Feels pretty fun. It feels like a fun matchup.
I think this matchup's really fun.
Yeah, I do.
If we don't see Gibbs get close to like 20 touches, we riot. Like if Craig Reynolds out touches Jahmyr Gibbs, we riot. Yeah, we riot.
Yeah,
respectfully.
A Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown would be fantastic. I'd be 100% rooting for that. I think this is going to go on a dedicated screen for me. This matchup away from red zone. The Niners aren't playing this week. Anthony Richardson might not be playing this week, so I don't get to watch my sweet prince. So in that instance, I think it's going to be Bijan o'clock. I just need to watch him for a full game. Before we move on to Aidan's matchup, Aidan, any points on this one? Anything that you are looking out for?
I had nothing additional. I think to Keegan's point, yeah, this is going to be a slower pace. We're really going to see the running backs and the running games just really be displayed in this one. So could be slower unless we get some of those bigger pop plays, which with some of these young, exciting running backs, we definitely could get. That first Bijan, 50-yard tutty is going to be absolutely
next
special.
Week.
I've been watching highlights of him all week.
Because I play Aidan this week. Jahmyr hits a home run this week, and then Bijan hits multiple home runs next week when I'm not playing Aidan.
We both get one this week, one apiece.
I'm curious, is their defense legit like the Falcons? Because they look legit, but they played the Panthers week 1, and Bryce Oh, baby. Milk was a bad choice. I might be airing out some Bryce Young takes. And they also played like Jordan Love without Aaron Jones, without Christian Watson. Like, and Love was fine, right? But we're gonna figure out if Atlanta's defense is legit.
One thing before we move on, like with Atlanta's defense, like they've already allowed 4 passing TDs. Like they're not allowing a ton of passing yards, but like they're definitely giving up touchdowns through the air, and they're not getting to the quarterback a ton right now either. Like they've only got 3 sacks, and they're like 29th in average time allowed to throw. Like right
Evergreen.
now,
They
almost
generate no pressure.
dude. They're getting like
years.
quarterbacks almost 3 seconds like to throw. It's pretty insane. So I don't think their defense is that legit. They just haven't faced an attack yet that has really presented them with many problems.
I saw a stat that Jared Goff is averaging 2 more. I mean, this offense with Jared Goff is averaging 2 more touchdowns per game at home than on the road.
He loves to play at home.
Insane.
He's insane.
It's something insane.
He's absolutely automatic.
Speaking of insane matchups, and this is the matchup with the highest point total of the weekend. This is the matchup that I think is going to yield the most fantasy points. We have the Los Angeles Chargers and we have the Minnesota Vikings. Aidan, tell us a little bit about this matchup in particular.
Yeah, as Shaun mentioned, this is by far the highest total of the weekend. Opened at 54, now up to 54.5 when I last checked earlier today. Going to who's favored here, this actually opened at Chargers favored by just half a point, moved down to a pick'em earlier today. So Vegas is pretty much telling us we don't know what's going on here. Just looking at the teams from a very high level view, these are 2 teams who a lot of people had penciled in as playoff hopefuls to start the year, both coming off of pretty good years where they both made the playoffs themselves. They both mightily underperformed, staring down 0-2 and looking to get off the schneid. As you know, starting 0-2 is nearly a death sentence, starting 0-3, and it becomes even less likely for you to advance and make the playoffs again. Just looking at the quarterback play here, I think this is what we're most excited for. We've got Kirk, who is currently second in the NFL in passing yards, just over 700 yards, just an absolutely insane pace. And Justin Herbert not far behind in 7th with 550. So these are 2 offenses that are going to absolutely sling it. Looking a bit closely at the Vikings, this stat is insane. They're throwing the ball at a 78% rate, which again is like something we had like last year. They were at 68, which was high. 64, sorry. They threw the ball 64% of the time, and it's increased dramatically, which was actually one of the biggest reasons I was actually out on Madison. Was this offense is just going to live and die through the air. They've got Kirk, they've got JJ, they've got Hawk, Jordan Addison. There's plenty weapons in the passing game to where they're just going to absolutely sling it. And talk about a match made in heaven. This Chargers defense has surrendered the most amount of passing yards thus far through 2 weeks. Granted, week 1 was against the Miami Dolphins, who absolutely pieced them for, what was it, some 500 yards. But you've absolutely got to be excited.
Tua alone had 500, dude. It was even counting the rush yards.
But that passing, defense has been getting torched, which has got to excite you if you are owning any type of Vikings pass catchers this week. JJ's obviously a lock in your lineup, but Jordan Addison must play this week. TJ Hawkinson showed up in a big way after a relatively quiet week 1. So I'm pretty stoked for that. Running back wise, you probably got to start Madison given where you drafted him. Like this is the last, I would say his final stand, but to our point, the Chargers defense is not as good as we all had anticipated. We thought this was going to be, a top 5 or 10 unit potentially, and it just doesn't look that stout in really either phase of the ball. So Alexander Madison should be in your lineup as well. Going to the other side here, the Chargers are a bit more of a balanced team. They're passing at just about 57%. So definitely trying to establish both phases of the ball, whereas the Vikings are just saying, Kirk, go handle it. The Vikings defense is actually 8th best against the pass. So a pretty good secondary, which I really didn't expect given who they have. But they are 4th worst against the run, which is interesting. We are expecting Austin Eckler. I think we're expecting Austin Eckler to miss another week. So to our point, Josh Kelly, man, if there's ever a week to, pay off on those free agent bids and, trades that people are making, it's got to be it right now. Like there's so much opportunity for Josh Kelly to have a massive game, I think, in this game script. So I think he's a great play. But even with the Vikings secondary being kind of as strong as it's been through 2 games, I'm still playing their pass catchers with confidence. Their passing attack has looked really good. Keenan Allen, obviously coming off of last game, is a must play. I think Mike Williams is absolutely in your lineup as well, just given that Justin Herbert, when he's on, can easily go 300, 400 plus yards, and those are his 2 main guys. So really exciting matchup here. I'd be surprised if this doesn't end up as the highest scoring matchup, given that the Vegas total is already kind of telling us they expect that to be a touchdown higher than anywhere else. You should absolutely have this one up on your TV. There's going to be points everywhere with some of your, highest drafted players. So buckle in for a good one. 10 a.m. game 2 for us on the West Coast. So absolutely starting out the day with fireworks.
Yeah, I'm super excited to watch this matchup. We saw in week 1, the Vikings defense sold out to stop the run and kind of dared Baker Mayfield to beat them. He was able to hit a couple deep shots, but it wasn't great. It was a little rough around the edges, especially in the first half. Week 2, the Vikings ran like a 3-high shell and just dared them to beat them running the ball, and DeAndre Swift went nuts. So I'm curious to know what Brian Flores' approach is to stop this offense, and I think it will dictate a lot of what Joshua Kelly is going to be able to do. And you mentioned Madison last stand. It kind of feels like how I mentioned last week with Rashad White, where I was like, Rashad, if you're ever going to do it, buddy, if you're ever going to do it,
Exactly.
let's do it this week. It kind of feels the same with Madison. It's like if Madison comes out, has a nice week, scores a touchdown, delivers on some of his draft value, then you're probably feeling a lot better about Madison because this is a relatively plus matchup. So I like this. I think he covered it really well. Yeah, I mean, in terms of points, I don't know if that hits the 54-point over. That's kind of an insane over.
A ton of points. That's a ton of points.
But there really is not a lot of studs on either side of the defensive ball, especially in the secondary for both of these teams. And we're playing indoors, baby. So is that in Minnesota or is that in LA?
It's in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So
indoors regardless, but I feel like those Minnesota games get wild.
Yep.
All right, so moving on to my matchup here. Quick no. Oh, Keegan, anything you want to add to that matchup?
No, I mean, I feel like if you have a player in this matchup, you just start him. If you're in a deeper league, you could start KJ Osborne, honestly.
Oh, jeez.
Like, also,
oh, jeez.
I don't even know if I want to start Josh Kelly. I'm so hurt by that whole ordeal.
It's a good week.
I think you have
it's a good
to.
week.
Like, you have
It's
to.
a good week
I have to because Eckler's not going to play again. So.
Oh, yeah. Why? Who cares? Yeah, you're playing him. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So quick notes. I thought about 2 other matchups to highlight before highlighting the one I'm going to talk about. Ravens versus Colts. If you did not watch Lamar Jackson play last weekend, go watch it. If you just watch the highlights, he was the best player in the NFL that wasn't Micah Parsons last week. It was very special stuff. If Anthony Richardson plays, I think that's going to be a pace shootout. Weather permitting to, it might rain on the East Coast, but Ravens versus Colts is a game I'm very intrigued to watch if Richardson plays, but we do not know if he's going to be out of concussion protocol. And then Jags versus Texans. I'm going to talk about that a little bit during my start of the week, but that matchup's presenting very, very well for fantasy purposes. The matchup I'm highlighting, though, is the Broncos at the Dolphins. So this is the Dolphins' home opener here. Russ is going to start cooking in South Beach. The odds here, so the total. The game opened at 44.5, and it is shot all the way up to 48.5. So a 4-point jump, which is nuts. That's spread, massive. The Dolphins open as 3.5-point favorites, and that line is shot up to 6.5. So they think the Dolphins are going to win, and there's going to be a ton of points. Looking at snaps and pace, so Miami is the 12th fastest team in terms of pace. They are the 7th in pass rate over expected. Why am I calling out these stats? We want to pick matchups where there are going to be a lot of plays ran. A lot of plays mean a lot of fantasy points. So we're looking at teams that move fast and that are pass happy. Miami is pretty solid in pace and has been pass happy to start the year. Denver has been 21st in fastest pace and 18th in pass rate over expected. So context here, Miami has played 2 fast teams in the Chargers and the Pats. Denver has played 2 slow teams in the Raiders and the Commanders. So I think we're going to find out a lot about these 2 teams and their true colors in terms of how fast they want to play. So that'll be interesting. I don't think this one projects as a pass happy shootout that we may see with the Colts and with the Ravens, but I'll highlight why I also think this is going to be a super fantasy friendly matchup. So on the defensive side of things, Miami has given up the second most fantasy points per game total. They've given up the 21st most passing, the 16th most receiving, and the 3rd most rushing points. Denver has given up the 14th most fantasy points per game. They've had the 9th most passing points, 13th most receiving points, and 15th most rushing points. Some interesting nuggets here to call out. The Miami rush defense has surrendered a touchdown on 6% of their carries this season, which is the 5th highest. The Miami rush defense has surrendered 2 yards before contact per attempt this season, which is 4th highest. Their defense against gap concepts in the rush game has actually been the 2nd worst in the NFL. Tua has 124 passer rating versus man coverage. He has a 91 passer rating versus zone. The Broncos defense has surrendered the 6th most fantasy points in man coverage. Russ has had a 103 passer rating versus man and a 94 passer rating versus zone. The Miami Dolphins defense has surrendered the 10th most points in zone coverage. The Broncos defense likes to run a lot of man. Good luck with Tua and Tyreek in man coverage.
I don't know how they're going to roll that off that defense out this week.
I don't know. They might need to change things up there because that looks like a disaster. They just got cooked by Sam Howell.
Does Surtain switch sides of the field, or because they run man? Do they let him shadow top wide receivers?
I think he does shadow.
Okay,
I would have to double check, but I'm pretty sure he does. But again, the way McDaniel schemes up Tyreek, I'm never too.
It won't even matter
coverage on Tyreek Hill. So in terms of all that information, because I just threw so many stats at you. Miami, this is a plus matchup for Tua in the passing attack. So if they're going to be running a lot of man coverage, good luck with how McDaniel is going to be scheming this up. If Waddle can't go because of a concussion protocol, I expect this to be a slate-breaking week for Tyreek. I have him as my wide receiver 1. The Dolphins' rush attack has been super potent. We've seen Raheem Mostert look fantastic. Brian Robinson just had a big week against Denver. I think Mostert is very well in play here as a top 15 play at running back. Denver, if there has ever been a week for Sean Payton to try and establish the run, it would be against this Miami defense, which is basically selling out to stop the pass and is becoming a run funnel, essentially. I don't know. Javonte and Pirine have been very mid at best this season, but if there was ever going to be a week to throw them out there and see if they can get some fantasy points, it would be this one. They basically have had a 50-50 split. I would play either one in the flex position, considering the matchup they have this week and considering the fact that Miami's gotten gashed in the run game. I think Russ could hit 2. I wouldn't be shocked if Russ hit a home run on a deep ball. We'd love to see a little more Marvin Mims in the game plan, Sean Payton. I don't really know why Brandon Johnson and little Jordan Humphrey are getting more routes. Mims ran 5 routes last week and had 113 receiving yards. Maybe, just maybe, we play him
2
more.
receptions, yeah.
Maybe. But Russ has really struggled against pass rush. Miami has been able to generate the 3rd most pressure, and they've been able to do that without sending more than 4. So they're able to generate pressure with 4 pass rushers, which has been kind of a nightmare for Russ. So maybe Russ is able to hit big on a couple deep shots. Maybe he's able to scramble a bit. Russ has been the QB, 4-3 on the season. He's had a couple big weeks. He had that garbage time Hail Mary that he got points on that didn't even make it in the end zone.
That was crap.
I don't know. I think some pundits have been suggesting that Russell Wilson's close to losing his job. I didn't have a chance to watch the all 22 yet of Russ versus the Commanders. The advanced stats indicate that he was fine. So I don't know if he's going to get benched anytime soon, but at 0-2, Sean Payton seems ultra competitive. So I don't really know what's going to happen here. I don't know if I would start Russ, even though the matchup's a bit appealing. But in this one, you're rolling with your studs, Tua and Tyreek, upgrade them. If there was ever a time to play Pirine, if there was ever a time to play Javonte, it would be this week against Miami. And if we knew Marvin Mims was going to play 50% of the snaps, I feel pretty comfortable playing him in the flex. And then Judy too, Sutton, they're probably fine. But that's it. Those are our 3 matchups, right? We're highlighting Detroit versus the Falcons. We're highlighting the Dolphins versus the Broncos. And, of course, we're highlighting Vikings versus Chargers. Last week, I asked you guys the question, which matchup would yield the most points? Which matchup we think is yielding the most points this week?
Oh, man. It's going to be Texans-Jaguars.
Texans-Jags.
I'm telling you, man, Ravens would do it if Richardson plays.
I like Colts-Ravens if Richardson plays. And then you could go chalk and choose mine, given a size total. But I think I think some of these games will surprise us. But I'm going to go Colts-Ravens, and with an asterisk that Richardson's playing.
Vikings and Chargers really shape it up to be such a shootout. So I guess I'll just go with that out of these three. And we'll highlight a little bit more in our start sits. Are you guys ready to get to start sits?
Oh, yeah. I've got some awful picks for this week.
All right. We are going to start with quarterback. We good to start with quarterback? So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to give our starts. We're going to give our sits at quarterback. We're going to go to wide receiver, running back, and tight end. So I'm going to go first. I'm taking the mic. I'm the host. I can do that. I've got Joe Burrow. I've got Anthony Richardson in a good amount of leagues. And I'm going to need to figure out who to stream this week. So obvious guys, like if I had to pick my flag plant start of the week, it'd be Lamar. I think Lamar is going to go off this week. As my top two play. I just really think he's going to eat against this Colts secondary. But if I'm looking at a streaming option, I was flirting with Matthew Stafford a little bit. He was intriguing. Russ was somebody that I was eyeing. But I actually, and this is risky, I'm not going to lie here, but I actually settled in on C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud is the QB 18 right now on the season. He was a bit rough in week 1. He had a really good game in week 2. This isn't, again, my flag plant here, but this is someone that a deep sleeper. This is somebody we're looking to stream. I'm going to say he's my start of the week here because 1, Houston has been running with the 4th fastest adjusted pass rate. 2, Stroud had 21 points in a plus matchup, putting up 384 yards and 2 touchdowns, mostly in garbage time last week, but he did it with 4 starting offensive linemen out. Laramie Tunsil is back this week, which is huge. He's going to get his all-pro left tackle. And 3, the Jaguars have given up the 11th most passing fantasy points through 2 weeks. So what we could see here is the Jaguars go up big or go up multiple scores. Texans abandon the run, become super pass happy, tons of no huddle rate, playing catch up garbage time. CJ Stroud gets home with 16, 18 points against a pretty soft secondary. So I think that makes him an ideal streamer this week because of game environment and positive game scripts. So that's why I'm going with Stroud.
I had him as my secondary one, like before we go to your sit as well, Shaun. But I also like league high 109 dropbacks for through the first 2 weeks. Like they're just wanting to throw the ball a ton. Like he's got a pretty good offensive line. Laramie Tunsil, you said, is coming back this week, and also Jacksonville's like the 5th least efficient pass rushing team right now. So I like this pick. I like this a lot.
Unserious defense in Jacksonville. Keegan, who are you starting this week?
So I try to give somebody maybe like outside the fringe, like top 12 this week, or like maybe somebody who might sit in like 15 or higher. And he shouldn't be, but I can understand why he's not. But it's Matt Stafford this week. I think this is a really good opportunity for him. Currently 3rd in the NFL in passing yards, 641. I think there's another opportunity for him to throw for 300 passing yards. The thing is, like minimal touchdowns, right? He's only throwing 1 touchdown, but like those will come. He will regress to the mean and get back into the end zone, I think, this week. I mean, he's crushing right now. He's playing elite football, 3rd in passing yards per game, 9th in ADOT, 3rd in big time throw percentage, has the 9th best like average time to throw currently right now. So he's gotten a lot of good work from the offensive line. Bengals defensive line is like 25th in the league at pressure rate. Puka and Tutu are playing like Puka and Tutu. It sounds like I'm talking about nicknames here, but they're playing out of their minds right now. One thing I don't understand, and this is why Vegas knows and I don't, it's like their implied team totals are only like 20.5 points. I think this game has sneaky potential for a shootout, but that all depends on if Burrow plays or not as well. But last week, Bengals also allowed 2 passing touchdowns to Lamar. I like Stafford's chances to, like I said, regress and throw a couple tutties this week on top of throwing for 300 yards again, he should have a fantastic fantasy day. It's also a great matchup against Cincinnati's cornerbacks. So,
yeah, my only fear is Cincinnati 29th in plays per game, so they have the 15th adjusted pace, and the Rams, I'm pulling it up here. Where are they at? LA, they're 11th. I guess it's fine. The issue is, what if Joe Burrow doesn't play and the Rams just smack them and Matthew Stafford just kind of sits on the ball? So I'm with you. I'm streaming Stafford in a league actually, so I'm for Burrow. So I'm with you there. So I think it's a good start. Aidan, who are you starting at quarterback this week?
Yep. So I'm taking him off last week's sit, and we are playing Dak Prescott this week. I think it is time that Dak Prescott has a big fantasy. He actually had a decent game last week, didn't really find the end zone much. But I think just looking what Daniel Jones did to that Cardinals defense and the prospect of what that Cowboys offense could do is tantalizing. Yeah, Daniel Jones was QB1 last week, threw for over 300 yards, 3 total touchdowns. Granted, Dak doesn't run quite like he used to. So he had zapped a little on the rushing ability, but there's no reason why Dak Prescott can't throw for 2 tutties, toss for at least 200, 250 yards, and have a pretty good day. The only concern is that they kind of boat race them and go up too big, kind of similar to what happened against the Giants week 1. But the Cardinals look scrappy. Like last week's game script would be pretty optimal for the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think the Cardinals will go up like that. Like, I think the Cowboys defense is far too good. But if the Cardinals can hang around in this game, keep it a 7-10 point game, Dak should be throwing for most of that and should give you a pretty good week. So hasn't really had a great week yet, but this is a pretty awesome spot given what we just saw last week. So yeah, if you've got Dak Prescott, it's time to keep him in there and be confident about it.
He's going to throw 3 passing touchdowns to Tony Pollard. It is going to be a posse. It's going to be a posse game. 10 toes down. Okay, 3. CJ Stroud, Matt Stafford, Dak Prescott. That's a solid mix of quarterbacks here. I like where we're thinking. In terms of who I'm sitting, and I'm not picking fun, I think I've seen the light on this quarterback. I think I was a hater in the offseason, but I legitimately think he's looked really good. A little erratic all over the place. All have
the same one?
But Sam Howell. Do we all have Sam Howell? Okay.
No.
And the only reason I'm sitting Sam Howell here, and this, again, you're probably like, why, Shaun? Why are you starting a guy none of people are starting? Because I was considering streaming Sam Howell this week. I really liked what he did last week against Denver. Wanted to put him in the lineup. But I just don't think he's an optimal replacement for Anthony Richardson or for Joe Burrow. First off, again, really like what he's been able to accomplish so far this year. However, Buffalo has been a pretty brutal matchup for QBs since the start of last season. In 2022, QBs have averaged 12 points a game against the Bills. In 2023, Jimmy G and Zach Wilson have combined to score 15 points, so 7.5 points against the Bills. I know those QBs aren't the epitome of fantasy greatness, but this is a tough matchup to stream Hal, considering the Bills' defense is so stout against quarterbacks. And because the Bills have been playing at a much slower pace this season, their 115 combined snaps average through 2 weeks ranks 31st in the NFL. So their games aren't seeing a ton of plays. Tough matchup for Hal. I wouldn't stream him this week for a Burrow replacement or for a Anthony Richardson replacement. So that's where I'm at. Keegan.
I think this is a good week to kind of like, don't get ahead of yourself. Don't let this guy burn you. I'm sure people have inserted him into the lineup as he started the season pretty well and doing better than I think most of us expected. But let's take a week off from Jordan Love, everybody. This is not the matchup to, I think, trot Jordan Love out there. I mean, the Saints are as consistent as it gets when it comes to defense this year and dating back to last year. They've allowed the 7th least passing yards on the season through 2 weeks. They've only allowed 1 passing touchdown. They've already got 3 interceptions. Second best in QB passer rating allowed this year. Like through 2 weeks, it's like 57.5, which was so low. Oh my gosh. They're also tied for 8th in sacks. They've already got 7 of them daddies this year. Going back to last year, this was, I was honestly shocked to see this, but they've only allowed 1 QB to score multiple TDs in the past 8 games. And in total, they've only allowed 5 touchdowns and like 9 interceptions. Jordan Love also doesn't have any rushing upside. So you really need him to do damage in the passing game and throw a couple tutties to be fantasy relevant. I just don't think that that path is there for him this year or this week.
Yeah, I've got the same QB. I think I don't think he could have drawn up like an easier start to the 2023 slate. Yeah, the guy's averaging 25 points per game in fantasy. He's thrown for 6 touchdowns. To your point, if it wasn't for a garbage time drive at the end of the Panthers Saints game, they've allowed 0 touchdowns all year in general. Like that defense is nasty on all 3 levels. So yeah, I think just kind of taking a look ahead, like this isn't a total just like shit on Jordan Love rant. They play the Lions week 4. That's probably where I'm like, okay, now like Jordan Love is seeing the lineup. I think that's a far friendlier matchup for him. Whereas like if he sniffs 15, 16 points this week, I would think it's a miracle.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to prance in there and throw for 3 touchdowns like he's done the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's nothing against him.
And if
it's
he
just
does,
a good week to like put the brakes on, like don't fall for it, like just take him out of the lineup and like save yourself.
Yeah, he's QB2 in fantasy.
Only positive here is number 9's returning. That's all I'm going to say. We're now
that's not confirmed.
We're actually Christian Watson. He's going to be in the lineup here. So
is that that's not 100%?
Yeah,
I don't
he's
know.
Practicing.
He's
full
practicing.
Participant. He's playing this week.
I thought he was still on the side.
No.
No,
He did
no, you're just
individual
being
drills
an
today.
optimist.
I don't think he was a full participant.
He was a full participant today.
I don't think that's true, but that definitely helps his chances if he does return. And then Marshawn Lattimore will just put him on an island somewhere.
I really seen participating in practice.
I think you made that up.
No, he was a limited participant. He's gonna get upgraded to full. He's playing this week, fellas. All right.
I like how you
Watson's
just
playing.
put that
He
together
was
there.
Christian Watson's playing.
So
this
he
week.
was completely limited.
He's gonna be in the fucking lineup.
I saw
limited.
Watson's coming
highlights
back.
Aidan of him just running individual drills, and Shaun was like, he was full participant, but I like this
he's
spin
playing.
zone. Good for you.
He's
If
playing.
he doesn't log a full practice,
He's logging
not
a full
playing.
one. Okay, they're gonna limit him. This is his first limited.
This
He's
is
got
hard
it
to
in
do
helmet.
because
You
it's
just
we're
want him to-
recording Wednesday night. So much could change. I
Watson's
still don't think
fucking
it's a good
playing.
matchup. I don't know if
fucking
Christian
playing. He's not
Watson
playing.
changes that so much. But.
You don't say that. Okay, moving on to running back. My start of the week. I have Kyron or Kieran Williams. Okay, this guy's got elite usage, 80% snap share, 46% attempt share, 72% route participation, 12% targets percentage. In fantasy points, expected fantasy points. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's a terrible. He is second in fantasy points expected fantasy points model. That is a lot of fantasy points jargon. And he's second in total fantasy points. So his usage says he should be the second best fantasy running back. His production, he's the second best fantasy running back, which is insane. The Bengals have surrendered the 4th most rush yards to running backs. They're one of 7 teams that have surrendered 200-plus rushing yards to RBs through 2 games. Those teams, on average, have given up 1.9 rushing touchdowns, but the Bengals have only given 1. So they should be a regression candidate to see multiple rushing touchdowns because Kyron is always on the field and he's now the bell cow for this Rams offense. I expect him to get in the end zone. Burrow doesn't play. This could be a Rams lean in real heavy on the run type game. Kyron's ability to earn targets too makes him such an easy play for me this week. I am starting Kyron Williams. Keegan, who are you starting at running back?
This one is so gross, but I think it's a good week to start Miles Sanders. Honestly,
No.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
this already tastes like no.
I mean, if
Spoiled
there was
milk.
any week to start him, this would be the week, right? I've said that a couple times about players tonight, so I must be suggesting some awful plays for the weekend. But hey, look, you know what? Seattle's already allowed 4 rushing touchdowns or 4 touchdowns to running backs this season. They've allowed 3 different running backs to score at least 12.6 points. He's getting like 15 touches a game. He's already got 32 carries and 11 targets just through 2 games. Like he's averaging 20 touches a game. Last year, Seattle, 4th most allowed points to running back position on the year at like 20.3. It's his opportunity to like keep the gap between him and Chuba Hubbard pretty wide. I think Chuba's kind of creeping in on that, but Seattle's defense is just like it's got holes in it, and it's definitely got holes that I think Miles Sanders can at least show out in for this week. And it feels so gross to say, but I just think it's a good matchup for Miles Sanders. Get right. Bryce Young, another week into his NFL career, like more offensive balance for them, just like meshing together. It looks like a good spot to play him in. And you know what? You probably might have to be starting him anyways. So this is more of a like start with confidence play for me. And I'll be starting him. So for all the Sanders owners, I'm with you. So I just want you to know I'm with you.
On like I think he has like 10 plus more touches. He has the same amount of fantasy points as Chuba this season. They're
That's
like
okay.
Neck and neck.
That's okay. We're chasing volume here
until this week.
Oh,
until this week.
Yeah,
and then Sanders is he's gonna let it rip.
Wow. Okay, we're all positive tonight. All right. Yeah, Keegan, great pick.
I'm being positive.
Aidan,
I'm positive.
Aidan, Keegan, get ready to dunk on me when Miles Sanders has his game. Do we actually think Bryce Young sitting is good for the offense or not? Because it might be with how bad he's looked. I don't know. QB1 Andy Dalton waiting in the wings.
I think he needs the reps.
Oh yeah. No. But oh goodness, Frank Reich saying
I don't want to be mean. He's too young. It's not. But it has been bad. It's been really
Frank
bad.
Reich saying they need to do a better job getting Laviska Shenault involved was a real quote that came out from one of his press conferences.
It's just
bad. Aidan, who are you starting to running back this week?
Yeah, let's keep it rolling. So this is a guy that had a pretty awesome week one. Game script was not very nice to him last week and kind of dropped a stinker. But I think Travis Etienne rebounds with a really nice week this week. So that Texans defense is really not that great. They've already given up a league-leading 6 rushing touchdowns. You can make the argument, sure, this is going to regress to the mean. Or you could just argue this is a rushing defense that's in the bottom third of the league. And now they're playing a Jaguars offense that, kind of just got a bit of a reality check in week 2. And I see them, kind of having their way with that defense. Travis Etienne is obviously going to get the bulk of touches, both in the rushing and receiving game. So I see this being a super positive game script for Travis Etienne. I wouldn't be surprised if he eclipses 20 yards in PPR leagues. He'll probably catch a couple balls, fall into the end zone at least once, maybe have, 80, 90, 100 rushing yards. I just think this is a super positive matchup for him to kind of get right and remind fantasy managers why you were drafting him in the 3rd round of your drafts this summer. So
I'm all in support of that. But can we please just get Tank Bigsby a touch? I just want to know if it's worth it to hold on to him. Like, just give him something.
Yeah, the 0 touches was concerning.
Yeah, that's one of my better takes to start the year is being all in on ETN. But then how many teams I draft him on? 0. Got him on 0.
0.
So that's on me. Do we all have the same sit? Because I feel like the sit. Is it?
It might be.
I'm sitting Jerome Ford. Are you guys sitting Jerome Ford this week?
I like that one. I feel like that one's obvious. Like, just avoid the Josh Kelly situation again. Like, learn from those who didn't.
So
look at me as an example, a victim.
I'm a victim.
So this is pretty simple. So death taxes and the Titans shutting down the run game. So last season they surrendered 15 fantasy points per game to running backs, which was the 2nd best. This season they've surrendered 7.9 fantasy points per game, which is 5th best. I know you just spent a ton of fab on Jerome Ford. He looked great against the Steelers. The Steelers have a pretty bad rush defense with Cam Hayward out. But this was the exact situation Josh Kelly was in. He scored 3.9 fantasy points. You're hoping Ford is active in the pass game if you start him. Kareem Hunt's lurking. I'm not too worried about Kareem Hunt taking Jerome Ford's role by any means, but you never know. He could vulture touches at the goal line if we get there. I would wait and see before trotting him out there. But again, if you're using him to replace Chubb, you're going to play him. Right, you're gonna play them.
Corporate wants you to find the difference in these 2 photos. They're the same picture. It's
Kelly
all over. Yes, Kelly and Ford. It's the same thing.
It's a brutal.
It's matchup. A brutal matchup coming off of like what is likely 60, 70, 80% of your fab budget to be like now I have to sit you because you probably picked him up because you lost Nick Chubb or Saquon's down and like you need someone to start and now it's like just a a brutal matchup. Brutal matchup. So
If you went with the luxury play with picking up Ford, just understand it might be a best to sit him this week. Keegan, who are you sitting at running back?
Zach Moss this week. This is another guy who's like Miles Sanders, is getting a lot of volume and touches, and he's actually stepped up pretty nicely. And I think he's riding a nice fantasy high. So people who have scooped up Zach Moss are probably pretty happy right now. But tough Baltimore rush defense. They held Pierce to 47 total yards. Just held Mixon to 95 total yards. 6 least rushing yards on the year allowed. And they've not allowed a rushing TD on the year yet. Also, they just don't allow like explosive plays. Not to say that Zach Moss is an explosive runner, but it's just like goes to show you how their defense is set up, that this is not a team that is friendly to running back matchups. So I think the pass catchers and the Colts have a good opportunity this week, but I do not think that Zach Moss is a good start for this week.
The usage is elite. The matchup
That's
is
fair.
the matchup is tough.
Very good usage. But
yeah.
sometimes usage can only mean so much,
Aidan, who are you sitting this week?
that's fair. Keegan dropped a breadcrumb actually along his explanation there. I am, and it pains me to say this, as this was a guy.
Don't
that,
do it.
You know,
Don't you dare.
This was one of our guys. In terms of like the dead zone guys, it was like Damian Pierce. It's time to sit.
Oh, no.
It's time to sit. Damian
That's already
Pierce.
twice
And,
he's popped up on this segment for us. I've already ripped a Damian Pierce sit, and now here we are again.
And I think it has to happen again. Damian Pierce isn't getting it done this year at all. Like, there's really no nice way to put it. Yeah. His stat line so far to start the year, 26 attempts for 69 yards for a measly 2.7 yards a carry. Hasn't found the end zone. And the Jaguars' defense is pretty nasty. They are 8th best against the run, allowing just over 80 yards a game and 1 touchdown on the ground so far. We've already kind of gone into like what we kind of expect from the Houston offense this week. And I think if anyone's going to pop in that offense, it's going to be their pass catchers, maybe another Nico Collins game, maybe Tank Dell off the waivers. But Damian Pierce just doesn't look very good. Maybe it's the offensive line. Maybe it's just Damian not being, the fantasy darling that we had all kind of hoped for with his volume. I don't know.
Do you know how many yards he averages before contact per attempt?
Oh, it's not going to be much at all.
0. He is not getting a
half a
single
yard.
yard before contact. It is literally,
So
he
it's
is
just immediate.
He gets a ball and he's
contact.
immediately hit.
That's so
That
bad.
is not a great run out. That's not going to create a lot of opportunities for fantasy points, especially when he's just not on the field as a pass catcher. Preseason indicated that he'd be out there catching passes. He's not, because if
He's
he
caught
was,
4 balls.
if-
He's caught 4
if
balls.
he was out there catching passes, we'd be living. We'd be honestly fine. He'd be fine.
Yeah,
He'd be able
it
to
sucks,
hit
but you've also you drafted Damian late enough to where it's okay to bench him. Like, you've got someone else there. It's
You just
put him in the doghouse.
You just
until
gotta
he's
hope.
ready to come
You
out.
gotta hope he has like a David Montgomery late season run. Where like he gets a bunch of soft matchups and their O-line's healthy, and you can ride him in the playoffs. Like, because it's not gonna hit at the beginning of the year.
He's giving you 6-point stinkers right now. And
You
that's,
can't play him. I'm not playing him. I'm not
you need
doing
to
it. I'm not doing
Yeah.
it. I'm not going to be there. Okay, that's a good one, Aidan. Moving on to wide receivers here, and we're at an hour, so I think we should move through this relatively quickly. Wide receivers, my start of the week, Jordan Addison. So through 2 weeks, the Chargers are surrendering 57 fantasy points per game to wide receivers. As we mentioned, this game is a 54-point total. Jordan Addison is the wide receiver 18 with the wide receiver 51 expected fantasy points usage. He has yet to clear 70% of snaps and is currently playing behind KJ Osborne. But deja vu here. Justin Jefferson broke out in week 3, his rookie year, after being limited to almost the same exact amount of snaps that Addison has seen through 2 weeks. We're in a shootout. It's a must-win game for the Vikings. I'm expecting Addison to fully deliver. So I'm starting Addison this week. Keegan, who are you starting at wide receiver?
I've got two good options this week. You already highlighted his quarterback earlier, but Nico Collins being one of them. I just feel like just keep riding the hot hand, and that's going to be a really good pass game script for Texans as they try and keep up in that game. And then my other one is actually from my highlighted matchup, and I think it's time to ride the hot hand again and start Drake London this week, everybody.
No.
When I told you guys I had some gross start sits this week, I was not lying to you. A point that I wanted to bring up from earlier that I highlighted in the matchup. Lions are a bottom 10 passing defense in terms of yards per game allowed, and they've already allowed 4 passing touchdowns. They also score points at Ford Field. Arthur Smith can establish it all he wants, but if he wants to stay in the game, he's got to get those pass catchers loose, and Desmond Ritter's got to get Kyle Pitts and Drake London involved this week. And hey, London, great bounce back week on 7 targets. He went 6 for 67 and a tud. It's a sneaky good matchup for Drake London. I like him a lot this week.
His 67 yards felt like 500 after week 1. I was
just pulling teeth.
18 points felt like 40 after that week 1 performance. Aidan, who are you starting this week at wide receiver?
I also stuck with a rookie similar to yourself, Shaun. I'm going with Zay Flowers.
He was my other guy.
Zay Flowers, it just feels like, so through 2 weeks, he's gotten 16 touches, but we really haven't had that massive game from him yet. It's been a lot of like shorter touches and whatnot. The Colts, who have given up the second most amount of points to wide receivers thus far through 2 weeks. Toss on OBJ being banged up, and this is by far the best wide receiver in that offense. I think we could see an absolutely massive game from him. Mark Andrews getting healthy, I think, only helps him out too, as now he can be, the true number 2 in that offense. But I think he could easily give us a 20-plus point outing this week against the Colts. So, no, wheels up for the rookie wide receiver, the rookie wide receiver from Baltimore, Maryland, man, Zay Flowers.
I was thinking long and hard about Mr. Flowers. I loved that he caught a deep ball in week 2 after being kind of like a gadget short A-dot guy in week 1. Moving on to sit here, my sit of the week, and this goes with Sam Howell, Terry McLaurin. The Bills have surrendered the 12th lowest A-dot this season to wide receivers, 7.1. Terry McLaurin's A-dot this year, 11.1. Jahan Dotson's average depth of target, 7.8. So that fits right in the wheelhouse of where the Bills are allowing fantasy points. This feels more, it feels more of like a Dotson game. On top of that, the Bills have surrendered the 3rd fewest receptions to wide receivers this year, the 5th fewest yards, and the 4th fewest yak. Just a tough matchup for wide receivers.
I think we might have the same one here too. I actually didn't see yours, but I'm guessing we're on the same page.
DeAndre Hopkins is my sit of the week.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I just think it's a bad matchup against Cleveland defense. If you take away that 71-yard touchdown from Pickens that was kind of on a missed tackle, they've been pretty stout against wide receivers in terms of fantasy production. T. Higgins and Jamar Chase combined for 9.1 points. And obviously Pickens did have a good game, but a lot of it came on that really big broken play. We've got great cornerbacks. The wide receiver matchup to cornerback matchup is one of the worst rated matchups on the weekend for DeAndre Hopkins. Just think this team is a little out of whack too. So I'm avoiding DeAndre Hopkins this week.
Yeah, I'm kind of avoiding that passing offense in general at the moment. It just to your point, it just doesn't look quite right.
Hope and a prayer.
Their leading receiver
is a hope and a prayer offense.
Yeah, it's just not very smooth. I'm going with another guy. I thought we'd be on the same one because this is a guy that I think you've liked in previous years. Is Marquise Brown. Actually a pretty nice week 2. He caught 6 of his 10 targets for 54 yards and found pay dirt for the first time against the G-men. But what a brutal matchup against Dallas this week. They've barely allowed 280 yards total through 2 weeks and is going to be smothered by Trayvon Diggs as he's really the only respectable pass catcher in that offense. So brutal matchup for Marquise Brown. I would only start him if you're in an absolute pinch.
Moving on to our last position here, tight end. Come on. Just when I'm out, I saw this guy get dropped today when I was.
No,
I got an alert.
No,
this said Kyle Pitts has been dropped.
No,
I had
that's
to
too
go.
far.
I had to put in a waiver claim, baby. I want Kyle on the squad. The Detroit Lions have surrendered the third most points to tight ends this year. The Falcons are playing at Ford Field, which Pat Thorman called Coors Field of the NFL. Drake London had his good game in week 2. Come on. It's time. Let's give Kyle his good game, right? Come on. It's week 3, soft matchup. Let's get Kyle Pitts going. The underlying metrics are there, right? Again, he's the number 1 tight end in my air yards league. And I think it's time for him to finally hit home. So come on, Kyle. Start of the week, baby. Let's get after it. Keegan, who you benching this week? Who you starting this week at tight end?
This is purely just a vibes pick, but it's time for Dallas Goedert to go off.
Yes, Keegan. Yes.
I
me
don't
too.
even have like stats for this one. Like I'm like purely picking on vibes. Like it's just time for Goddard to get involved. Last week I noticed a lot of like early, I wouldn't even call them design reads and plays, but like they were getting to Goddard early and often dump offs, and I don't want that necessarily from their offense, but I do like that they've obviously are trying to overcorrect a mistake that they believe they've made on the offensive scheme front. And I think this week it'll be a little bit more planned out, but I like Goddard this week.
Yeah, dude, he led their team in targets last week. He had 7 targets. I think we're absolutely trending in the right direction. Like we just need some better ADOT and some more, like meaningful catches. And yeah, maybe let's get him in the end zone. I don't know, Sirianni. What do you say we get our boy Dallas in the end zone?
Seriously,
no.
It feels like
I think we're due for a
AJ Brown week though. After he's
overdue for a big week
after
too.
he complained about not getting the rock.
Yeah.
They play the Bucks, right?
Yeah, they're at Tampa.
The Bucks give up passing yards.
Yeah.
So I could see it. I definitely could see it. Sit of the week. Sitting Luke Musgrave. Anyone else got Lukey?
no,
Luke Musgrave.
No, but it makes sense.
Christian Watson is trending towards playing. There we go. Musgrave is averaged a 13% target rate, a 1.92 yards per route run, and a 70% route participation. All strong underlying statistics for a tight end. But what's it going to look like with Watson on the fold? He hasn't really produced that much without an alpha out there, and Watson is the alpha of this offense. On top of that, the Saints have, on average, surrendered 5 points to tight ends in 2 weeks after stifling the position all last year. So I would stream elsewhere. So who are you guys sitting at tight end this week?
Aidan, you go first.
Yeah. I think this is like a perma-sit until further notice. And that's Tyler Higbee. It's just like it's just not at all what we thought. Yeah, so we thought without Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee was going to be an absolute target hog, and that just didn't happen. He's caught 6 of his 10 targets this year for 61 yards. Just not at all what we had anticipated, especially with Matthew Stafford, who we thought had a pretty good rapport with him. The Bengals, too, just on top of that, have given up less than 100 yards total in 2 games to the tight end position. So between the matchup and his just lack of involvement in the offense, for lack of better words, I'm kind of out on Tyler Higbee until further notice. So this is like you're firmly on the bench, is not just for the week.
I'm still rolling him out there. I'm still chugging him out there. I don't know. It's tight end. What are you gonna do?
Right.
Keegan?
Keegan, take us on.
Buffalo tight ends this week. Knox and Kincaid.
Bogo.
We're running the
Knox
Bogo
not
special.
though.
Knox is not practicing, and even if he doesn't play, I'm still not playing Dalton Kincaid. Washington has been great against the tight end position this year. They are near the bottom of the league, and tight end defense, left hand up. That looks a little weird.
I'm LHUing right now. Okay, don't bug me. Shaun, can you take out the garbage? No, I'm LHUing. I can't do it.
All right.
But yeah, that'll do it. I think for start sit. Wow, that felt like a marathon to get through. Holy cow! Why did that take so long?
We are over an hour in here. If you are still watching,
thank you,
and listening, hit the subscribe button. Come on here. If
you're
anyone
here at this
actually
point,
made it to tight ends, you're a legend. Good for you. Keegan, before we jump, anything you got to say to the listeners?
Man, I got nothing today. Usually I've got a football game in my brain. Usually I'm thinking about something. Oh, if you're here still and you're watching, tell a friend about the YouTube channel. Drop a comment. Ask us a question. Interact with us on Twitter. We like to talk to you guys. If you're watching and you want to know something, there's 3 of us. We'll get to the question. Drop a comment in the YouTube. Let us know who you're trying to start, who you're trying to sit. Let us know if you have trade proposals. We want to hear from you guys more often.
Aidan,
I like that.
Aidan, you and Keegan were beefing a little bit earlier today.
Oh, let me
Keegan
tell the
hates my
listeners.
Bears,
Let me tell the
bro.
listeners that I'm sorry and
Things
I
took
owe
a dark
Aidan
turn today.
apology.
He might have said he thought it was funny that Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles. Took a dark turn. It took a dark turn today.
No, me and Keegan are all good. All good. Oh God, dude, I'm laughing still.
Oh, friendship peaks. Friendship
Friendship
peaks.
peak. Pass it on.
All right, fellas. And thank you everybody for tuning in. Until next time.